Riker found them in a half-collapsed cave on the northern border, 3 small bodies huddled against a woman who wasn't moving anymore. Snow had drifted through the gaps in the stone, covering them in white powder that made them look like sculptures. Frozen monuments to a sacrifice he didn't understand yet. His 3 pups, Ash, Rowan, and Ember, were alive. Shivering and scared, but alive. The woman who'd kept them that way was marked. He could see the claiming scar at her throat even from 10 feet away, could smell another alpha's scent woven through hers despite the cold and snow. She was Ilara, Luna of Emberclaw Pack, his rival Alpha Valen's mate. And God's help him, she was also the true mate Riker had been trying to forget for 2 years. Biology had a sick sense of humor. Tell me, where are you watching this story from today? 48 hours earlier, Ilara had been safe in Emberclaw territory, preparing herbs in the medical wing and trying not to think about ice-blue eyes and a mate bond she could never claim. The mark on her throat ached the way it always did when she thought about Riker, a reminder that she belonged to someone else, that true mates didn't matter when politics and duty had already decided her future. You're thinking about him again. Valen's voice came from the doorway, matter of fact rather than accusatory. Her husband understood better than most what it meant to be bound to someone who wasn't your mate. I'm thinking about the inventory shortage, Ilara lied, though they both knew it was a lie. We need more feverfew, and the winter harvest was poor. Ilara. Valen moved into the room, his presence commanding but not threatening. 3 years of political marriage had taught them how to navigate each other's boundaries. The weather reports are saying a major storm is coming. Historic snowfall, dangerous conditions. I'm keeping all patrols close to Pack lands. Good. Ilara focused on grinding herbs, the repetitive motion soothing. No one should be out in that. Which is why I'm asking you not to go herb gathering tomorrow, even though I know you have that look on your face that says you're planning to. Ilara's hands stilled. There's a patch of winter root near the northern border that only grows during first freeze. If I don't harvest it before the heavy snow hits, we'll lose access until spring. And we need it for the elder wolves' joint pain. We have enough supplies to last until spring. Barely. Ilara met his eyes. I'm a healer, Valen. This is what I do. I've been navigating these woods since I was a pup. One storm killed 3 wolves last winter. Valen's voice hardened with alpha command. I'm not losing my Luna to stubbornness. The word my sat uncomfortably between them. Ilara was his Luna in title and mark, but they both knew the truth. Their marriage had been arranged by their families to unite 2 influential packs. They respected each other, even cared for each other in a familial way. But there was no passion, no mate bond, no love beyond duty and friendship. Valen had his own true mate somewhere, a she-wolf he'd met before their arranged marriage, but couldn't claim because politics mattered more than biology. They'd both made the same sacrifice. Both bore marks that should have gone to someone else. I'll be careful, Ilara said finally. I'll go early, before the worst of the storm hits. I'll take the emergency pack and the location beacon. If conditions deteriorate, I'll turn back immediately. Valen studied her face, then sighed. Take 2 warriors with you. They'll slow me down. Take 2 warriors. Alpha command, no room for argument, or don't go at all. Ilara wanted to argue, but knew when Valen used that tone, he wouldn't budge. Fine. 2 warriors, early morning, quick trip, back before noon. Before noon, Valen agreed. And Ilara, come back, please. The please hurt more than the command, because it reminded her that Valen did care in his way. That they were stuck in this together, 2 wolves marked to each other when their true mates existed somewhere else in the world. Ilara had met Riker 2 years ago at a neutral territory treaty meeting. She'd been Luna of Emberclaw for only 6 months, still adjusting to the politics and responsibilities. Riker had been there representing Frostpeak Kingdom, his recent widowerhood still fresh enough that other alphas watched him with pity. Their eyes had met across the council chamber, and the mate bond had hit like lightning. Immediate, undeniable. Soul-deep recognition that this person was meant to be hers, except she was already marked, already claimed, already bound to Valen by magic and law and duty. Riker had felt it too. She'd seen it in his face, in the way his ice-blue eyes had widened with shock and something that might have been grief. They'd both frozen, the mate bond screaming between them while their respective positions made acting on it impossible. Since then, they'd avoided each other. No more treaty meetings. No border patrols anywhere near shared territory. No contact that might make the bond pull harder than they could resist. But Alara felt him anyway. Through the bond that shouldn't exist, through the connection that defied the mark on her throat. She felt his presence like a second heartbeat, felt his emotions bleeding through in quiet moments. Loneliness, determination, and underneath it all, the same aching want she felt every time she thought about ice-blue eyes and a voice she'd heard only once. The storm hit earlier than predicted. Alara and her two warriors, Marcus and Thea, had been in the northern woods for maybe 30 minutes when the wind picked up with vicious intensity. What had been light snowfall became a wall of white that made visibility drop to almost nothing. "We need to turn back," Marcus shouted over the howling wind. "This is getting bad fast." "5 more minutes," Alara called back. "The winter route patch is just ahead. I can see—" The sound cut through the storm. High and terrified and distinctly young. A child crying. All 3 wolves froze. There shouldn't be any pups out here. The northern border was contested territory, dangerous even in good weather. No pack would send children into these woods. "Did you hear that?" Thea's hand went to the weapon at her hip, warrior instincts on high alert. The cry came again. Multiple voices this time. Small and scared and getting harder to hear over the wind. "Children," Alara said, already moving toward the sound. "There are children out here." "Luna, wait!" Marcus grabbed her arm. "This could be a trap. Rival packs have used— Those are real children crying." Alara pulled free. "I'm not debating this. Find them, now!" They found the pups huddled under a fallen tree, 3 small forms trying desperately to stay warm. 2 boys and a girl, none of them older than 7. They wore Frostpeak colors, the distinctive dark blue and silver that marked Riker's pack. Ilara's heart stopped. She knew without asking whose children these were. The eldest boy had his father's dark hair and the same stubborn set to his jaw. The girl had Riker's ice-blue eyes. The youngest boy was tiny and shaking so hard his teeth chattered. Please help," the eldest managed through chattering teeth. "We got separated from our warriors. The avalanche. There was an avalanche and we ran and got lost and—" "Shh, you're safe now." Alara dropped to her knees beside them, her healer training overriding everything else. Hypothermia. All 3 were showing signs. Blue lips, violent shivering, confusion. "I'm going to help you. What are your names?" "Ash," the eldest boy managed. "This is R. Rowan and Ember, Riker's children." The mate bond flared hot in her chest. Protective instincts, she had no right to feeling screaming that these pups needed her, that they were hers to protect even though they weren't, even though they belonged to a mate she could never have. Marcus, Thea. Alara was already removing her heavy cloak, wrapping it around the smallest boy, Ember, whose shaking had become dangerous. "We need to get them to shelter immediately. They're hypothermic. The storm's getting worse." Thea looked around, her expression grim. "We'll never make it back to Emberclaw territory in these conditions. And Frostpeak is even farther. There's a cave system near here. Old ruins from before the territory wars." Alara lifted Ember, who was barely conscious, and started moving. "It's not perfect, but it'll keep the wind off. Move." The cave was more of a crumbling stone structure, remnants of some ancient building long since reclaimed by the forest. but it had partial walls and a section of intact roof, which was more than they had out in the storm. Alara got the 3 pups inside, her warriors helping, her mind already running through triage. "We need to warm them slowly," Alara said, examining each child with practiced efficiency. "Too fast will cause shock. Marcus, start a fire if you can find anything dry enough to burn. Thea, check the perimeter for other survivors or threats." They worked quickly. Marcus managed to coax a small fire from some sheltered wood and his emergency flint. Thea confirmed they were alone, no other Frost Peak wolves nearby, no enemies lying in wait. Just 3 lost pups and a storm that showed no signs of stopping. "Luna," Marcus's voice was carefully neutral. "Those are Frost Peak pups. Alpha King Riker's children, unless I'm mistaken. Valen will want to know about this." "Then tell him when we get back." Alara was rubbing warmth into Rowan's small hands, trying to get circulation back. Right now, they're 3 hypothermic children who need medical attention. Their pack affiliation doesn't change that. Their pack affiliation changes everything. Thea's expression was troubled. Emberclaw and Frostpeak aren't exactly allies. If we're found with Riker's children, then we're found saving them from a blizzard. Alara's voice carried Luna command. "I'm not leaving children to die because of pack politics. Is that understood?" Both warriors nodded, though neither looked happy about the situation. The hours that followed were some of the longest of Alara's life. The storm intensified rather than passing, wind shrieking through gaps in the stone, snow drifting through cracks in the roof. The small fire helped, but wasn't enough. Not for 3 small pups who'd been exposed to freezing temperatures for too long. Ember, the youngest, was the worst. His shaking had progressed to the dangerous stillness that meant his body was shutting down. Alara held him against her chest, sharing her body heat, willing warmth into his tiny frame. "Tell me about your papa," she said softly, trying to keep him conscious. "What's he like?" "Strong," Ember whispered. His voice was so quiet she had to strain to hear. "He's the strongest alpha in the whole world. He can fight anyone. And he gives the best hugs. And he makes funny voices when he reads us stories." Ilara's chest tightened. She'd known Riker was a father, but knowing and seeing were different things. These weren't just the Alpha King's heirs. They were 3 children who loved their papa and needed him. "He sounds wonderful," Alara managed. "He's sad, though." Ash, the eldest, spoke up from where he was huddled with Rowan. "Since Mama died, he tries to hide it, but we know. He gets this look sometimes like he's far away." "I miss Mama," Rowan added quietly. "But Papa says she's watching us from the moon now, that she's always with us." Alara blinked back tears. She shouldn't be here. Shouldn't be holding Riker's children, listening to them talk about their lost mother and grieving father. Shouldn't be feeling this pull of connection and protection that had no right to exist. But the mate bond didn't care about should. It screamed at her to protect these pups, to keep them alive no matter what it cost. "Your mama would be very proud of you," Ilara said, hugging Ember tighter. "All 3 of you. You've been so brave." "Are you someone's mama?" Ember's small hand clutched at her shirt. "You feel like a mama." The question hurt more than it should. Ilara and Valen had no children. Had agreed early in their marriage that bringing pups into a loveless bond wouldn't be fair to anyone. She'd never been a mother, never would be unless the impossible happened and the mate bond she couldn't acknowledge somehow became real. "No, little one, I'm not a mama, but I'm a healer, and I'm going to make sure you get home to your papa safe. I promise." The storm worsened. Marcus's fire died despite his best efforts, the wind too strong and the wood too wet. Thea tried to use her body to block the worst of the wind from the entrance, but it wasn't enough. The temperature dropped steadily, their breath visible even in the enclosed space. "Luna," Marcus's voice was grim. "We need to make a choice. The storm's not passing. If we stay here, we're all at risk of hypothermia. But if we try to move in these conditions with 3 small pups, we stay." Ilara's decision was immediate. Moving them now would kill them. We stay and we keep them warm until either the storm passes or help arrives. And if help doesn't arrive? Thea asked quietly. Then we stay anyway. Ilara looked at the 3 small pups huddled together, Ember now unconscious in her arms. We don't leave children to die. That's not who we are. Over the next hours, the situation deteriorated. Marcus and Thea did their best, but even trained warriors had limits. The cold was becoming dangerous for all of them. Ilara's fingers were numb, her face aching from the temperature, her body starting to shake despite her efforts to stay still. But the pups were worse. All 3 were showing signs of advancing hypothermia, confusion, lethargy, dangerously slow breathing. They need more warmth, Ilara said, her voice tight with fear. More than we can give them like this. What do you want us to do? Marcus looked as scared as she felt. We're doing everything we can. Ilara looked at her heavy winter cloak, at the extra layers she'd worn for the trip, looked at her 2 warriors who were already giving everything they had. Then she looked at 3 small pups who were dying because she didn't give enough. The choice was obvious. Marcus, Thea. Ilara's voice was steady despite the fear. Move the pups together, close as possible. I want them sharing body heat. She removed her cloak and wrapped it around all 3 children. Removed her outer tunic and added that to the pile. Removed every layer until she was down to the barest minimum needed for modesty, her body immediately protesting the cold. Luna, no! Thea grabbed her arm. You'll freeze! They'll die. Ilara pulled free and climbed into the huddle of pups, wrapping her body around them, sharing what warmth she had left. Better me than 3 children. Valen will kill us if you die protecting Frost Peak pups, Marcus said desperately. Then don't let me die. Ilara pressed her face against Ember's hair, feeling how cold he was, how still. Keep watch. If the storm breaks, get them to Frost Peak territory. Tell Riker. Her voice caught. Tell Alpha King Riker his children were brave, that they fought hard, that they're worth saving. You're going to tell him yourself, Thea said fiercely. You're not dying here. But Ilara could feel her body shutting down, could feel the hypothermia setting in, her thoughts getting fuzzy, her shaking intensifying until it hurt. The pups were warmer now, nestled in her cloak and pressed against her body. Their breathing steadied slightly. Their color improved fractionally. She was dying. But they were living. That was enough. There's a lullaby, Ilara whispered, her lips barely working. My mother used to sing it, about the moon watching over lost pups, finding them in the dark, bringing them home. She sang it, her voice breaking and fading, the words slurring together. Sang it until she couldn't anymore, until the cold was too deep and her body too heavy. The last thing she heard before the darkness claimed her was Ash's small voice saying, "Don't leave us." She couldn't promise she wouldn't. Riker felt the moment something went catastrophically wrong. The mate bond he'd been suppressing for 2 years suddenly blazed with terror and pain and the sharp certainty of dying. Not his emotions, hers, Ilara's, his mate who wasn't his, who belonged to another alpha, who he'd been trying to forget for 24 months. She was dying. Alpha? His beta, Garrett, stepped forward. They were in the command center, coordinating search efforts for his 3 missing pups. The avalanche had separated them from their training patrol 3 hours ago. Every available warrior was out looking despite the storm. What's wrong? She's dying. Riker's voice was hollow. My mate is dying. Garrett's eyes widened. You have a mate? Since when? Who? Luna Ilara of Emberclaw Pack. The admission tasted like failure. We met 2 years ago at a treaty meeting. Mate bond hit immediately, except she was already marked by Alpha Valen, already claimed. So I buried it and tried to pretend biology hadn't just destroyed my life a second time. Alpha King, she's dying right now. Riker grabbed his coat, already moving. I can feel it through the bond, and she's—" He stopped, hit by a wave of emotion so strong it staggered him. She's scared, but also determined, protecting something, fighting to stay alive for— Realization hit like a physical blow. She found them. She found my pups. How could you possibly know that? Because the emotions I'm feeling through the bond aren't just fear. They're maternal protection. Desperation to keep small things alive. Riker was already shifting, his human form dissolving into the massive black wolf marked with silver that designated him Alpha King. She found my children, and she's dying trying to keep them alive. He ran into the storm, the mate bond pulling him forward like a rope. North into contested territory where Emberclaw and Frost Peak borders blurred. Into weather that would kill most wolves, but barely slowed an Alpha King running on mate instinct and desperate fear. She was marked by another alpha, claimed by Valen. Impossible to have even if Riker wanted to acknowledge the bond, which he'd spent 2 years trying not to. But she was dying, and she'd saved his children. And the mate bond didn't care about politics or previous marks or anything except the certainty that his other half was slipping away. Riker ran faster. He found them by following the bond and the faint scent of his pups beneath the heavy snow. The collapsed stone structure was barely visible, snow piled high against the entrance. 2 Emberclaw warriors stood guard, their faces grim. Alpha King Riker! The female warrior's shock was visible even through the snow. Your children are inside. They're alive, but our Luna— Riker was already pushing past them into the shelter. The scene broke something in his chest. 3 small bodies huddled under a cloak, dark against white snow that had drifted through gaps in the stone. Ash, Rowan, and Ember were alive. He could see their breath, hear their heartbeats, feel their small bodies warm beneath the fabric. And surrounding them, holding them with the last of her strength, was Alara. She wasn't moving. Her skin was blue-white with cold, her lips nearly purple, her breathing so shallow he had to strain to hear it. She'd stripped down to almost nothing, given every piece of warmth she had to keep his pups alive. The mark on her throat stood out stark against frozen skin. Another alpha's claim that should have prevented this, prevented her from caring about Frost Peak's heirs. But she'd saved them anyway, sacrificed herself for 3 children who weren't hers, who belonged to a mate bond she couldn't acknowledge. How long has she been unconscious? Riker demanded, already pulling off his own coat to wrap around her. 10 minutes? 15? The male warrior looked devastated. We couldn't get her to stop. She kept saying the pups needed warmth more, kept giving them everything until she had nothing left. Riker lifted Alara carefully, his touch reverent despite the terror. She was ice in his arms, her body temperature dangerously low, her heartbeat weak and irregular. Your Luna just saved my children's lives at the cost of her own. We need to get her back to Emberclaw, the female warrior said urgently. Alpha Valen won't reach her in time. None of us will. Riker's medical knowledge was limited, but even he could see Alara was minutes from complete shutdown. Frost Peak is closer. I have healers who can— She's marked by Alpha Valen. The male warrior stepped forward. You can't just take another alpha's mate. I can if it's the difference between her living and dying. Riker's command rolled through the space. And I will, my pack, my healers, my responsibility since she saved my children. He looked at his 3 pups, still unconscious but alive, and felt his throat tighten. Bring them, all of them. We move now. Alpha Valen will consider this an act of war. Then let him. Riker was already moving, Alara cradled against his chest, the mate bond screaming with her fading life force. But he's going to have to go through me to get to her. And I'm not losing my mate twice. The admission hung in the frozen air. Both Emberclaw warriors stared at him with shock and something that might have been understanding. You're her true mate, the female warrior said quietly. We wondered. The way she looked sometimes when someone mentioned Frost Peak, The way Alpha Valen never... She cut herself off. Take her. Save her. We'll bring the pups and deal with the political fallout later. Riker didn't wait for more discussion. He shifted with Alara still in his arms, a trick few alphas could manage, and ran for Frostpeak territory with his dying mate pressed against his chest and prayers to the moon he'd stopped believing in 4 years ago. Don't let me lose her. Not when I just found her. Please don't let me lose her. The mate bond pulsed weakly in response, a fragile thread connecting him to the female who'd saved his children and might not survive the night. Frostpeak's medical wing was prepared when Riker burst through the doors with Alara in his arms. His head healer, Mira, took one look at the unconscious female and started barking orders. Severe hypothermia. Looks like she's been exposed for hours. Get heated blankets, warm water baths, cardiac monitors. Move. Mira's hands were already checking Alara's vitals, her expression grim. Alpha King, when did she lose consciousness? I don't know. 15 minutes ago? 20? Riker laid Alara on the medical bed as gently as he could, his hands shaking slightly. She was protecting my pups, gave them all her warmth. By the time I found them, she was already dying, Mira finished bluntly. Her core temperature is dangerously low. Heart rate is erratic. If she'd been out there another 10 minutes, we'd be planning a funeral. She paused, her eyes catching on the mark at Alara's throat. Alpha King, she's marked by someone else. I know. Then you also know that treating another alpha's marked mate without permission is the difference between her living and dying. Riker's voice dropped to Alpha Command. Save her. Deal with political complications after. Mira held his gaze for a moment, then nodded. Everyone out except essential medical staff. Alpha King, that includes you. No. Riker's hand found Alara's, the mate bond flaring weakly at the touch. I'm staying. You're going to be in the way. I'm staying, Riker repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. He stopped, the admission caught in his throat. She's your mate, Mira said quietly. I can smell it on you, on her. The bond is unmistakable. Her expression softened slightly. But Alpha King, she's marked by another. That complicates everything medically and politically. I don't care about complications. I care about her surviving. Then let me work. Mira's tone was firm, but not unkind. Sit in the corner, stay quiet, and don't interfere. Understood? Riker moved to the corner, his eyes never leaving Alara's too-still form as Mira's team worked. They stripped away her frozen clothing, replacing it with heated blankets. Submerged her hands and feet in carefully temperature-controlled water to restore circulation. Attached monitors that beeped warnings about her dangerously low heart rate. Through it all, the mate bond stayed weak and flickering. Alara's emotions barely present, her life force dimmed to almost nothing. Garrett appeared in the doorway. Alpha King, the pups? Are they alive? Riker asked without looking away from Alara. Yes, hypothermic but stable. Healer Cora is with them. Garrett paused. The Emberclaw warriors are here. They're asking about their Luna. Tell them she's being treated, that I'll update them when I know more. Alpha King, there's more. Garrett's voice was careful. Alpha Valen has been contacted. He's on his way. Should arrive within the hour. Of course he was. Riker had essentially kidnapped another Alpha's mate, even if his intentions were purely medical. Valen would be well within his rights to demand her return, to challenge Riker for the insult, to declare this an act of war. But Riker would fight every Alpha in existence before he let Alara die because of political protocol. When he arrives, bring him directly to me. Not the medical wing. My office. I'll handle Valen. And if he demands to see Luna Alara immediately, then he'll have to go through me first. Riker's eyes finally left Alara long enough to meet Garrett's gaze. I know the political implications. I know what this looks like. But she saved my children, Garrett. Saved them at nearly the cost of her own life. I'm not letting protocol kill her when I have the means to save her. Garrett nodded slowly. The pack is asking questions about why their Alpha King brought home a marked Luna from a rival pack, about the 3 pups who are calling for the nice lady who kept them warm, about what happens next. What happens next is she survives. Riker's voice was hard. Everything else is secondary. The hours that followed were some of the longest of Riker's life. He sat in that corner, watching Mira work, feeling the mate bond pulse with Alara's struggling life force. His pups were brought to him briefly, all 3 alive and recovering, asking about the female who'd saved them. But Riker could barely focus on their questions. Ash, his eldest, seemed to understand more than his younger siblings. "She's your mate, isn't she, Papa? The nice lady. I could feel it, the way you looked at her." "It's complicated," Riker managed, "because she belongs to another Alpha." Ash's voice was wise beyond his 6 years. "But she's supposed to be ours. I can feel it too. She feels like she should be here, with us." Sometimes what should be and what is are different things. Riker pulled his son close. "But you're right. She does feel like she should be ours. She just can't be." "Why not?" "Because she made a promise to someone else before she knew we existed, and promises matter." Ash considered this with the seriousness of a child who'd lost his mother too young. "But she saved us, Papa. She could have left us to die, and she didn't. That has to mean something." "It means everything." Riker's voice was rough. "It means she's exactly as brave and selfless as I knew she was. And it means I owe her a debt I can never repay." "You could keep her," Rowan offered from where she was curled against his other side. "Make her stay with us. Then she'd be safe." "That's called kidnapping, little one, and it's wrong." "Even if it keeps her alive?" Ember's small voice was drowsy, but determined. "Even if we want her to stay?" Riker looked at his 3 pups, alive because of Alara's sacrifice, and felt his heart break in new ways. "Even then, she belongs to someone else. We can't keep her just because we want to." But the mate bond disagreed, pulling insistently toward the medical wing where Alara fought for her life. Insisting that she was his, had always been his, that the mark on her throat was a lie written by politics instead of destiny. "Her temperature is stabilizing," Mira announced hours later. The relief in her voice was palpable. "Heart rate is improving. Circulation is returning to her extremities. I think—" She paused, checking monitors. "I think she's going to make it." Riker was on his feet before she finished speaking. "When will she wake?" "Could be hours, could be days. Her body's been through severe trauma. It needs time to recover." Mira's expression was cautious. "But Alpha King, when she does wake, we need to address the complication." "What complication?" "The mark." Mira gestured to Alara's throat. "She's claimed by Alpha Valen, marked and bonded, but I can smell your mate bond with her, feel it in the air. Those 2 things shouldn't coexist." "They don't coexist well," Riker said quietly. "I felt it for 2 years, the bond pulling me toward her while her mark pushes me away. It's—" He searched for words. "Agonizing, like being torn in half constantly. For you, yes, but for her?" Mira's voice was gentle. "Alpha King, a marked mate feeling a true bond with someone else causes physical pain. The mark fights the bond. Her body has been in conflict for 2 years, trying to reconcile impossible biology. That kind of sustained stress weakens immune systems, causes chronic pain, and can eventually lead to serious illness. Are you saying the mark is killing her?" "I'm saying having 2 competing bonds is unsustainable. Eventually, something has to give. Either she breaks the mark with Alpha Valen, which is dangerous and potentially fatal, or she rejects the true mate bond with you, which is emotionally devastating and rarely successful, or she continues as is until her body can't handle the conflict anymore. Riker stared at Alara's still form, horror dawning. How long does she have? If she doesn't choose? Months? Years? I can't say for certain, but Alpha King, she's already weakening. I can see it in her vitals, in the way her body responded to the hypothermia. She should have recovered faster, should be stronger. The competing bonds are draining her. Then we break Valen's mark. The decision was immediate. If that's what saves her, we do it. It's not your decision to make. Mira's voice was firm. Breaking a mark requires consent from the marked individual, and even with consent, it's incredibly dangerous. The mark is magic and biology intertwined. Removing it forcibly can cause shock, seizures, even death if done improperly. But it can be done? With the right precautions, yes. But Alpha King, Mira held his gaze. It also requires consent from the Alpha who placed the mark. Alpha Valen would have to willingly release her. Otherwise, breaking it becomes exponentially more dangerous. Then I'll convince him to release her. You think he'll just let go of his Luna? Give up his mate to a rival Alpha? She's not his mate. She's mine. The words came out harder than Riker intended. Valen marked her through political arrangement. I'm bonded to her through destiny. There's a difference. Tell that to the mark that's literally written into her skin. But Mira's expression wasn't unsympathetic. Look, I understand the situation is complicated, but you need to be prepared for the possibility that Alara chooses to stay with Valen. That she decides her duty and her mark matter more than a mate bond she never asked for. Then I'll accept her choice. The words tasted like lies. But I'll make damn sure she knows all her options first, that she understands staying with Valen while bonded to me is slowly killing her, that there is another way, even if it's difficult. And if she chooses you, if she wants to break Valen's mark and accept your bond, then I'll fight anyone who tries to stop her. Riker's voice was quiet but absolute. Including Valen himself, if necessary. Mira nodded slowly. For what it's worth, Alpha King, I think she already chose you, the moment she sacrificed herself to save your pups instead of protecting herself. That was mate instinct overriding mark obligation. She just doesn't know it yet. Riker looked at Alara. Brave, selfless Alara, who'd nearly died saving his children, and let himself hope for the first time in 2 years that maybe the impossible wasn't quite as impossible as he'd believed. Valen arrived an hour later, his presence announced by the sudden tension that rippled through Frost Peak warriors. Riker met him in his office as planned, the two alphas facing each other across centuries of complicated history and current crisis. Valen was tall and broad, his dark hair shot through with silver at the temples, his eyes a deep brown that held intelligence and weariness in equal measure. He looked like what he was, an alpha who'd spent years carrying burdens he'd never wanted. Where is she? Valen's voice was controlled, but Riker could hear the worry beneath. Where's Alara? Medical wing, being treated for severe hypothermia. She's stable now, but unconscious. Riker kept his own voice level. Your warriors gave me permission to bring her here since Frost Peak was closer. My warriors don't have authority to give my marked mate to another alpha. But Valen's tone lacked real heat. Though I understand why they did. If she was dying, she was. Another 10 minutes and we'd have lost her. Riker met Valen's eyes. She saved my pups, Valen, found them lost in the storm and protected them with her own body. Gave them everything until she had nothing left. Your Luna is the reason my children are alive. Something shifted in Valen's expression. That sounds like Alara. She can't help but heal, can't help but protect, even when it costs her everything. He was quiet for a moment. Your pups? They're the ones from the avalanche? The whole territory's been looking for them. They were separated from their training patrol, got lost in the storm, Alara found them purely by chance. By chance or by fate. Valen's eyes were knowing. She's your true mate, isn't she, Riker? Has been for a while, if I'm reading this correctly. The direct question caught Riker off guard. You know? I suspected. Alara's been different for 2 years. Distant. Troubled. At first I thought she was just unhappy with our arrangement, but then I realized it was more than that. She was in pain. Valen's jaw clenched. Physical pain that she tried to hide. Emotional pain that she couldn't. I asked her once if she'd met someone else. She didn't answer, but her silence told me everything. If you knew, why didn't I release her? Valen's laugh was bitter. Because she never asked. Because our families expect certain things. Because breaking a political marriage and a sacred mark isn't something done lightly. He paused. And because I'm a coward. I have my own true mate out there somewhere, Riker. Have known for 4 years. But I keep Alara marked because letting her go means admitting I'm trapped in the same impossible situation. Riker stared at the other Alpha, seeing past enemy and rival to someone who understood exactly what he'd been living with. We're both prisoners to politics that don't care about mate bonds. Except now those politics nearly killed her. Valen's voice hardened. My healer warned me months ago that Alara was weakening, that something was draining her. I didn't realize it was the conflict between my mark and your bond until now. Mira says it's unsustainable, that eventually her body won't be able to handle both. She'll have to choose, break your mark or reject my bond, or die slowly while trapped between both. Valen's eyes closed briefly. 3 terrible options, and none of them fair to her. Unless you release her. Riker kept his voice carefully neutral. Willingly break the mark, make it easier, safer. Let her choose without the threat of death hanging over the decision. And give my political enemy exactly what he wants? Hand over my Luna to the Alpha King who could use her as leverage against Emberclaw? But Valen's words lacked conviction. The Council would see it as weakness. My pack would lose faith in my leadership. Your pack would see it as mercy, as an Alpha putting his Luna's well-being above politics. Riker leaned forward. Valen, she nearly died saving my children. Doesn't that tell you everything about where her heart actually is? About who she's really meant to be with? It tells me she's a healer who can't let children suffer, regardless of whose they are. Don't romanticize it. I'm not romanticizing anything. I'm looking at facts. She's my true mate. Your mark is killing her. And you just admitted you have your own mate waiting somewhere. We're all trapped in this together, punishing ourselves and each other for the sake of politics that don't actually serve anyone. Valen was quiet for a long moment. If I release her, if I willingly break the mark, what happens to Emberclaw? My pack has relied on the political advantages that come from my marriage to Alara's family. Without that connection, we negotiate a new alliance, directly between Frostpeak and Emberclaw. One built on actual cooperation instead of forced marriages and old grudges. Riker held Valen's gaze. I'm not interested in using Alara as leverage. I'm interested in keeping my mate alive and happy. If that means working with your pack instead of against it, I'm willing. You'd trust me? After everything? No, but I'd trust Alara. And if she believes you're worth protecting, worth nearly dying for because she couldn't leave children to suffer even if they were enemy pups, then maybe there's more to you than our pack's rivalry suggests. Valen laughed quietly. That's either naive or brilliant. I haven't decided which. He stood, moving toward the door. I want to see her. Before I make any decisions, I need to see Alara for myself. She's still unconscious. I don't care. She's my Luna, my responsibility, even if she's your mate. I need to see that she's actually going to survive. Riker nodded, leading the way to the medical wing. They walked in tense silence, two alphas who should have been enemies but were instead bound together by one female who'd somehow become important to both of them in entirely different ways. Riker nodded, leading the way to the medical wing. They walked in tense silence, two alphas who should have been enemies but were instead bound together by one female who'd somehow become important to both of them in entirely different ways. Alara woke to voices and pain. The voices were familiar. One belonged to Valen, steady and concerned. The other was newer, but somehow more essential, pulling at something deep in her chest. Male, commanding. Worried in ways that made her wolf whine with need to comfort. The pain was everywhere. Her skin felt raw, her muscles ached, her head pounded. But worse was the burning at her throat where Valen's mark sat, pulsing with agony that hadn't been there before. "Can't keep her here indefinitely," Valen was saying. "Regardless of the bond, she's still marked as Emberclaw's Luna. My pack expects your pack can wait until she's actually conscious to make decisions about her future." The second voice was sharp, protective. "She nearly died, Valen. Give her time to recover before you start making political demands." "I'm not making demands. I'm stating facts. Alara has responsibilities, a pack that needs her. You can't just keep her because biology says she's your mate. And you can't keep her marked when it's literally killing her." Alara forced her eyes open. The medical wing was dimly lit, comfortable rather than clinical. Two males stood at the foot of her bed, facing each other with the tense energy of alphas trying not to fight. Valen looked exactly as she remembered, tired and worried and carrying burdens he'd never wanted. The other male was, Riker, Alpha King of Frostpeak, father of 3 pups she'd protected, and her true mate, even though she'd spent 2 years trying to pretend that bond didn't exist. He was exactly as she remembered from their one brief meeting 2 years ago, tall and powerfully built, dark hair and ice-blue eyes that saw too much. But different too, older, more tired, more guarded. Like he'd spent the same 2 years she had trying to bury something that refused to stay buried. "She's awake," Valen said quietly, noticing her open eyes. "Alara, thank the moon. We thought—" "Your pups." Alara's voice was rough, barely above a whisper. She looked at Riker, the mate bond flaring hot between them now that they were both conscious and in the same room. "Are they alive?" "Because of you." Riker moved closer, his presence making her wolf practically vibrate with need. "Ash, Rowan, and Ember are alive and recovering because you sacrificed yourself to keep them warm. They're asking for you. Want to thank the nice lady who saved them." Tears pricked Alara's eyes. She'd been so afraid, so certain she wouldn't make it, that she'd failed them despite her best efforts. "They were so cold, so scared. I couldn't leave them, even though I knew I should, even though they were mine," Riker finished softly. "Even though they were the enemy Alpha's children, you saved them anyway. I'm a healer, it's what I do." But even Alara could hear the lie in that. She hadn't saved those pups because of healer training. She'd saved them because they were his, because the mate bond had screamed at her to protect what belonged to her mate, even if she could never acknowledge that mate existed. "Alara." Valen moved to her other side, his expression complicated. "We need to talk about a lot of things. But first, how do you feel?" "Like I froze to death." Alara tried to sit up and immediately regretted it, pain lancing through her body. "How long was I unconscious?" 2 days. Riker's hand steadied her, his touch sending electricity through the mate bond. "You had severe hypothermia. Nearly didn't make it. 2 days." Alara looked between the two alphas, seeing the tension crackling between them, and felt dread settle in her stomach. "I'm in Frostpeak territory. You brought me here." "I brought you here," Riker confirmed. "Your warriors gave permission since it was closer and you were dying. Valen arrived shortly after. And hasn't left, Valen added. His voice held something Ilara couldn't quite identify. Been camping in Riker's guest quarters, waiting for you to wake up. My pack is probably in full revolt by now. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate. I didn't mean to cause a political incident. I just saved 3 pups that any decent wolf would have saved, Valen interrupted. Don't apologize for that. Apologize for nearly dying in the process, maybe, but not for the choice itself. The mark hurts. Ilara's hand went to her throat where Valen's claiming scar pulsed with heat. It didn't hurt like this before. Why does it hurt now? The 2 alphas exchanged glances. Finally, Riker spoke. Because you're in close proximity to your true mate while bearing another alpha's mark. The 2 bonds are in conflict. It's causing physical pain. Ilara had suspected as much, but having it confirmed made everything worse. The mark had always been uncomfortable when she thought about Riker, but now, with him standing right there, the mate bond pulling insistently, it felt like her throat was burning from the inside. How bad is it? Valen asked quietly. The pain. How long has it been like this? 2 years, since the treaty meeting. Ilara met his eyes. Since I met him and realized my true mate existed but was impossible to have. The mark has been fighting the bond ever since. And you never told me. What would you have done? Released me? Ilara's laugh was bitter. We both know that wasn't an option. Our families, our packs, the political alliance, all of it depended on our marriage staying intact. Telling you would have just made you feel guilty for something neither of us could control. I could have done something. Should have noticed you were in pain. You had your own pain to deal with. Ilara's voice was gentle. Don't pretend I didn't know about her. The she-wolf you met before our arrangement was finalized. The one you still think about sometimes when you think no one's watching. Valen's expression cracked. You knew? Of course I knew. We've lived together for 3 years, Valen. I'm observant, and you're terrible at hiding longing. Ilara looked between the 2 alphas, her husband by mark and her mate by destiny. We're all trapped in impossible situations, all suffering because politics matter more than biology. Not anymore. Valen's voice was firm. Not if I can help it. Ilara's breath caught. What do you mean? I mean I'm releasing you from the mark. Valen pulled a chair close, sitting so he was at eye level with her. I should have done it 2 years ago when I first suspected. Should have put your well-being above pack politics. But I was a coward. I'm not being a coward anymore. Valen, you can't just... The pack will adjust. Our families will be disappointed. The council will complain. And all of it matters less than you being happy and healthy. Valen's hand covered hers, brotherly rather than romantic. You saved Riker's pups, Ilara. Put yourself at death's door for 3 children who weren't yours, who belonged to a pack we're supposed to see as rivals. That tells me everything about where your heart is, about who you're really meant to be with. But if you break the mark, Emberclaw loses the political advantage of, we'll figure it out. Riker and I have already discussed possible alliances, new agreements that benefit both packs without requiring forced marriages and miserable lunas. Valen squeezed her hand. You deserve to be happy, Ilara. Deserve a mate who's actually yours by choice instead of duty. Let me give you that. Tears were streaming down Ilara's face now. You deserve the same thing. Your true mate, the she-wolf you won't talk about. I know. And maybe once you're settled, once I've done right by you, I'll find the courage to pursue my own happiness. But right now? Valen's smile was sad but genuine. Right now, I'm focused on making sure you get yours. Ilara looked at Riker, who'd stayed silent through the entire exchange. His ice-blue eyes were intense, full of emotions she couldn't quite name. Want, fear, hope, determination. If I accept this, Ilara said slowly, if Valen breaks the mark and I bond with you, what happens? How does this work? I don't know how to be your mate, don't know your pack, your life, your children beyond one terrifying night in a cave. Then we figure it out together. Riker moved closer, his presence enveloping her. I'm not expecting you to slot perfectly into my life, Alara. I'm expecting us to build something new, together, as partners. Your pack won't accept me easily. I'm from Emberclaw, marked by your rival. They'll see me as an outsider, possibly even a threat. Then I'll convince them otherwise, show them what I already know, that you're brave and selfless and exactly the kind of Luna Frostpeak needs. Riker's hand found hers, the mate bond singing at the contact. But Alara, I need you to understand something. Breaking Valen's mark is dangerous. Even with his consent, even with proper precautions, there's risk. The mark is magic and biology intertwined. Removing it can cause shock, seizures, even death if done wrong. I know. Alara had studied marking rituals as part of her healer training, knew exactly how dangerous breaking a claim could be. But staying marked while bonded to you is also killing me, slowly but surely. Your healer told you, didn't she, about the conflict draining me? She did. Then I don't really have a choice, do I? Break the mark and risk immediate death, or keep it and guarantee slow deterioration. Alara's voice was steady despite the fear. At least with the breaking, there's a chance for something better on the other side. There's also a chance you don't survive the ritual at all. Riker's grip tightened on her hand. I can't. I've already lost one mate. I can't lose another. The admission hung in the air. Riker's first mate had died in childbirth 4 years ago, leaving him with 3 small pups and a grief he'd never fully processed. The thought of losing another mate, one he'd barely gotten to know, clearly terrified him. Then we make sure the ritual is done right. Alara looked at Valen. You'll need to be present. Your willingness to release the mark makes it safer, less traumatic on my system. I'll be there, whatever you need. And I'll need your strongest healer, Alara told Riker. Someone experienced with mark breaking, someone who won't panic if things go wrong. Mira's done it twice before, both successful. Riker's voice was strained. But Alara, if you're not sure about this, if you need more time to decide, I've had 2 years to decide. 2 years of living in pain, of knowing my true mate existed but was impossible to have, of pretending I was fine when I was slowly breaking apart. Alara met his eyes. I'm sure, Riker. I'm terrified, but I'm sure. When? Valen asked. When do we do this? Tonight. Mira's voice came from the doorway. The healer had been listening, her expression grave. Luna Alara's right that the conflicting bonds are draining her. Every hour we wait makes her weaker, makes the ritual more dangerous. If we're doing this, we do it soon. Tonight, Alara agreed, before I lose my nerve, before the pain gets worse, before I change my mind. The hours until the ritual were surreal. Alara was moved to a private chamber designed for magical workings, reinforced walls, wards against interference, medical equipment standing by. Mira explained the process in clinical detail, not sugarcoating the risks. The mark is anchored in 3 places, Mira said, showing Alara diagrams. Physical, the scar at your throat. Magical, the bond that connects you to Alpha Valen energetically. And emotional, the memories and experiences you've shared. Breaking all 3 simultaneously is traumatic. Your body will fight it because the mark is designed to be permanent. But with Valen's consent, it's possible. Possible, yes. Guaranteed, no. Mira's expression was serious. You'll be in significant pain. There may be seizures, shock, cardiac arrest. I'll have medications ready to manage symptoms, but ultimately your body has to decide to release the mark. If it fights too hard, if the magical component doesn't want to let go, you could die. And if it works, you'll be unmarked, free to bond with your true mate. But Alara, Mira's voice softened. You need to understand that even successful mark breaking leaves scars, emotional ones. The mark represented 3 years of your life. Removing it isn't just physical. It's erasing a part of your history. A part I'm ready to let go of. Ilara looked at Valen, who'd stayed close throughout the preparations. No offense. None taken. Valen's smile was rueful. If anything, I'm relieved. Carrying the guilt of marking you when you were meant for someone else has been its own burden. This frees us both. Riker had been quieter, his worry palpable through the mate bond. Now he moved closer, his hand finding Ilara's. If at any point you want to stop, if it's too much, you tell us. I'd rather have you alive and marked by Valen than dead from trying to claim a bond that wasn't meant to be. It was always meant to be. Ilara squeezed his hand. We just had to fight for it. And I'm willing to fight, Riker. For you. For us. For the chance at actually being happy instead of just surviving. The ritual began at midnight. Ilara lay on a raised platform, Mira on one side with her medical equipment, Valen on the other holding her hand. Riker stood at the foot of the platform, close enough to see everything, but not interfering with the process. This is going to hurt, Mira warned one last time. Are you ready? No, but do it anyway. Mira's hands settled over the mark at Ilara's throat, glowing faintly with healer magic. Valen closed his eyes, focusing on the bond he'd created 3 years ago and now needed to break. And Ilara braced herself for pain that she knew would be unlike anything she'd experienced before. The first stage was physical. Mira's magic sinking into the scar tissue, working to dissolve the mark that had been burned into Ilara's skin. It felt like her throat was on fire, like someone was carving into her flesh with heated blades. Ilara bit down on the leather strap Mira had provided, refusing to scream but unable to stop the tears streaming down her face. Physical anchor breaking, Mira announced, moving to magical. The second stage was worse. This was where Valen's consent mattered, where his willingness to release the bond made the difference between success and catastrophic failure. Ilara felt the magical connection between them, the invisible thread that had linked them since their marking ceremony, begin to fray. It pulled at something deep inside her, something fundamental, like part of her identity was being ripped away. She did scream then, couldn't help it. The pain was too intense, too all-consuming. Her body arched off the platform, convulsing, fighting the loss of something it had accepted as permanent. "Hold her!" Mira's command was sharp. "Valen, more focus! The bond isn't releasing cleanly. I'm trying!" Valen's voice was strained. "It's fighting me, like it doesn't want to let go." "Then make it." Riker's voice cut through the chaos, alpha command that made everyone in the room straighten involuntarily. "Valen, you said you wanted to release her. Prove it. Break the fucking bond." Something shifted. Ilara felt Valen's will harden, felt him actively rejecting the mark he'd placed 3 years ago, felt the magical bond between them snap with an audible crack that echoed in the physical world. She screamed again, her body going rigid with agony. This was it, the worst part. The moment where her system decided whether to accept the breaking or reject it entirely, whether to let go or hold on and die trying. Through the pain, through the fear, through everything, Ilara felt the mate bond with Riker. It pulled at her, bright and insistent and alive, reminding her why she was doing this, what she was fighting for, who waited on the other side of this nightmare. Her body chose to let go. The release was sudden and devastating. One moment, Ilara was bound to Valen by magic and mark and 3 years of shared history. The next, she was free, unmarked, unclaimed. Hers again in ways she hadn't been since before her arranged marriage. And immediately, the mate bond with Riker surged forward to fill the emptiness, wrapping around her like a security blanket, soothing the raw places where Valen's mark had been. "It's done." Mira's voice was shaking with relief. Mark broken successfully, magical backlash contained. She's going to be okay. Alara opened her eyes to find Riker's ice-blue gaze locked on hers, intense and relieved and full of emotions that matched what she felt through their bond: want, joy, hope, home. "Hey," she whispered, her voice wrecked. "Told you I'd survive." "You're insane," Riker managed, but he was smiling. "Completely insane, and I'm never letting you risk yourself like that again." "Probably for the best." Alara tried to sit up, found she couldn't, and settled for just looking at him. "So what happens now?" "Now?" Riker moved closer, his hand cupping her face with impossible gentleness. "Now I claim my mate, if she'll have me." "Always," Alara breathed. "I was always going to choose you, Riker. Since the moment we met, I just had to fight my way here." The claiming happened 3 days later after Alara had recovered enough to stand without shaking. It was a small ceremony, just essential pack members, Valen as witness representing Emberclaw's blessing, and 3 small pups who'd insisted on being present for the moment their papa found happiness again. Riker's claiming mark settled over the place where Valen's had been, erasing the last traces of the old bond. It felt right in ways the first mark never had. Natural, destined, home. "Welcome to Frost Peak, Luna Alara," Riker murmured against her throat, sealing the claim with a kiss that made the mate bond sing with completion. "Welcome home," Ash added solemnly. At 6 years old, he took his role as eldest very seriously. "We're glad you're staying with us." "We saved you a room," Rowan offered shyly, "next to Papa's, so you can be close." "And we made you a present." Ember bounced with excitement, holding up a rock painted inexpertly with stick figures. "That's you, and that's Papa, and those are us, and we're a family now." Alara looked at the 3 pups who'd become hers through sacrifice and love and impossible circumstances. Looked at Riker, her true mate who'd waited 2 years for this moment. Looked at Valen, who'd given her the freedom to choose happiness over duty. "Yeah," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We're a family now." And for the first time in 3 years, Alara wasn't pretending, wasn't surviving, wasn't trapped between duty and destiny. She was just home. If you enjoyed Alara and Riker's story, make sure to subscribe for more alpha romance. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when I upload new stories featuring impossible bonds, heart-wrenching sacrifices, and mates who fight against fate. Join our membership for exclusive content and early access to new releases. Comment below what you think about Alara's choice and let me know what kind of alpha romance you want to see next. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.